Hello again, so this is part 2 of building our first website, or you building your first website. It's the first watch along / build along video that I've ever done, and this is how it's gone down so far. Just to remind ourselves of the challenge, this is what we are doing, this is what I am using. I'm using a browser, I'm using Terminal, I'm using Atom, GitHub, Git, Photoshop, and TinyPing. And I set myself some challenges. These are the build rules of this particular challenge. The website will not use any advanced CSS preprocessors or any advanced stuff at all. This first ever website that we're building is meant to be very simple. It's meant to show the power of HTML and CSS by using the really simple stuff. So all we're using is good old-fashioned HTML and CSS. All the layout stuff, I'm using Flexbox, and it's going to be responsive to a kind of a basic level. And I'm using source set for higher resolution displays, so the images are a little bit more advanced. I also set myself a challenge of doing this in 30 minutes. I failed that. As you can see, I've crossed it out on the slides there, so I didn't achieve it, but we're going to crack on and get this website finished, because actually I wasn't that far away from getting it finished in 30 minutes. This is the website here that we're building. And by the way, if you haven't seen part 1 of this, go back right now, go back and watch part 1 of it, because that's where I started and that's where I set everything up. We're carrying it straight on in this video. So this is the progress that I've made so far. We've got Google Fonts in there, we've got the majority of the layout done. The responsive stuff isn't done yet, but we're going to get to that shortly. Some of the link styles is done, the logo is done, and majority of the work is done. But before we get to anything else, the first thing I'm going to do is commit the process that I've done so far, the progress that I've done so far. So I'm going to do this on the command line, and this is the first commit on this project I've done so far. Bad Craig. And I'm just going to do something, a really rubbish commit message, end of first video, and then I'm just going to push that online, and then I'm just going to check that it works. So let's have a look here and refresh this. As you can see there, it's pushed the changes, and I've only got 1 commit, and it's the end of the first video. Again, bad Craig. In general, when you're committing stuff and when you're deciding what points you should push stuff online and what save points you should make in your code, I wouldn't recommend waiting halfway through your website to do it. I probably would have done it if I would have been doing this properly and I wouldn't have been trying to make the website in 30 minutes. I probably would have laid out the website first, so I would have put the HTML and the CSS and things like that in there. Then I would have made a save point of it, so I would have committed it at that point. Then I probably would have put the images in and made the basic layout that we've got here. At that point, I would have committed it again, etc., etc. So you should regularly commit stuff, because it allows you to go back to previous versions if you mess something up, and I didn't really do that, so let's not talk about that anymore. So let's carry on with what we've got. Let's take another look at the PSD that we've got here. So this is the PSD, and it's what it looks like, and you can see really that the majority of the design is kind of there. There's not much left to do. I've kind of done the header. That bit's already done, so that's looking okay, but I think we need to put some more padding in between these, so I'm just going to take the Photoshop ruler tool again and just work out how much space we've got between here. So the width is saying 250 pixels. Now remember that the density of this file here, I've made the files 2 times, so it's not actually 250 pixels wide, it's actually half that, which is 125 pixels wide. So I'm going to go back to my code, find the site nav section, and change the margin left to 125 pixels instead. That's a little bit too wide, as you can see. It's not going to work there. So just for now, before we get to the responsive stuff, I'm just going to leave it at that, and it's pretty much looking bang on with that now. We can see the photo is looking okay, and we just need to put some styles on these bits below. So let's have a look at this. I'm going to look at the colors, so we can see this is a different color. So I'm going to copy that color and start with this and change this. It's using Ubuntu Lite. So in my code earlier, when I was laying this out, you'll have noticed that I put classes around everything. And we should have a post meta there. So the post meta thing is the thing I am going to target. If fact, I'm going to make a new section for this. No, I'm not. I'm going to leave it all in the layout just for this example. Post meta. I want the color of that to change first of all. So I don't think the color of that's changed there. Let me just check. I think in this instance I may have to be more specific. Yeah, because it's a link, and as it would be on the website, because it'd be linking off to a category, I need to be more specific with the CSS that I'm writing here. So let's just get a little bit more specific with this on the color. That's better. But I don't want to be more specific with the other things that I'm putting on it. I want these to still be general. So I'm going to make it uppercase, first of all, with text transform. That's good. And then I'm going to change the font family. So I'm just going to scoot back over to Google Fonts and just get the thing that I can copy and paste here, which is that. Paste in there. And as I did before, I'm going to change this to font. So I can change the size. In this video, I'm not too fussed about getting these sizes exactly right, as you'll have noticed. I'm just making them look kind of okay. But obviously when you're doing this for your actual website, you should be focused on making the pixel sizes bang on and not just random like I have. So that's okay. Now I need to change the title here because this is much lighter on this example. So let's make that lighter. So we'll target the post meta, the post title actually it was next, I think. Let me just double check. Yes, the post title. And I'm going to change the font weight to normal rather than heavy or rather than bold because by default H1s, H2s, H3s, basically any heading size are bold. And you'll have seen there that didn't work, so I'm going to have to be more specific with that. And in this instance, because there might be a time in the future where I want to target different H2s or different heading sizes, right now I'm going to put all of the heading sizes in there so it doesn't trip me up later on. I know that the design is completed and there's nothing different to it here, but I want to make sure I future-proof my CSS as much as I can. And I'm going to think about that right now rather than waiting for the future when the design might break because I didn't think of something in the CSS. So that should have targeted it. There we go. That's looking better. And the size, is the size different? Yeah, I think the size is slightly bigger. So let's make those just slightly bigger. 1.2M should probably do it. Oops. Nope, 2.2M maybe. That's a little bit too big, so let's try 1.8M. There we go, that's better. That's about the right size, I'd say so. And I think I just need to make this just a touch bigger as well. There we go. So now I'm just going to tackle this content here underneath because you'll see that this looks a little bit different as well. It's got more spacing in it and it's also a little bit smaller too, so we're going to make it just a touch smaller. To be honest, I think the text in this design is a little bit too small, but for the purpose of this video, and we're recreating a PSD that I haven't created, I've just downloaded this off the internet, I'm just going to copy it exactly as is. So let's target post body next. So post body, we'll try font size first of all. Let's see if we can change all the font sizes straight away without having to be specific. And that's worked, but that's a bit too small. That's a bit better. And then let's put some spacing in between it with line height. 165% line height. It's usually the sweet spot, I think. That looks good. Maybe just a little bit higher just for this design because it's a little bit more spaced out than that. That's better. And then finally is just the leave a comment thing. So the leave a comment thing is the same size and color as the meta, but it just looks, but the spacing of it, the tracking of it, the space between the letters is just slightly bigger. So Let's make that a little bit bigger. And I need to put a class on this. So I'm going to put a class of post comment and spell comment right. Like that. Let's have a look and target post comment. And I'm going to copy these styles here. In fact, no, I'm going to be better than that. I'm going to do it like that. So it targets both at the same time. That's better. And then I just need to change the color as well. So we're going to copy this and put this in here too. So we're targeting two colors at the same time because they're the same. Remember the dry principle, don't repeat yourself. We've got an option to reuse the same styles that already exist, so we're going to do it. That wants to be post comment instead of post comment A. There we go. I think the final thing we need for that is just a bit of letter spacing, which is how you do tracking. Maybe 2 pixels will be right. No, it's a bit less than that. 1 pixel. That looks good. And I think the font looks a bit too thick, actually. So I'm just wondering if we need to just change that to be something like font weight 300. That doesn't seem to have worked. I'm wondering if I've not set Ubuntu Lite. Yes, I have. That's the default one that I've set, so that's as light as we're going to get it for this design, so that'll do. So the next thing I'm going to do is start spacing these things out. Now, the principle here with margins is something that I learned from Harry Roberts. With margins, obviously, you can add margins to the top, to the left, to the right, and to the bottom. But I often find that when you start adding margins to the top and the bottom of things, things get very confusing very quickly. So a principle that Harry Roberts always said was only add margins to the bottom of the elements. And this is a general rule of thumb, by the way. This is not an absolute. It's not a complete law. But he says only add margins to the bottom and to the right of things. That way, when you need to add lefts, margin lefts or margin tops, things don't get too confusing because you know that every single margin that you've added to your site is on the bottom. So what we're going to do with the design is I'm going to add margin bottoms to the elements, all of these elements, which will lay it out quite nicely. So I'm going to need the ruler tool again. And we can see that is about 25 pixels. So let's start there. And now because I'm adding something specific to post meta, I'm going to have to do another one underneath it. Margin bottom 25 pixels. Yep, that looks good. And then, is this the same? No, that's 75 pixels. So about half of that. And we're just going to add this to post title. Because we've added post title now as well, by the way, I'm going to indent this so it's obvious which things are relative to it. Margin bottom 35 pixels. That looks good. Actually, that looks a bit too much. I think I'm going to drop that down to the same as the other one, as 25 pixels. Yep. And then is this 25 pixels as well? No, it's about 50 pixels. So on the body, I'm going to put margin bottom 50 pixels. That looks good. And then for, oh no, I've added that to the wrong thing there, because the margin bottom on the body, which is there, is actually higher than that. It's 261 pixels. So half of that is 130 or so. So this wants to be 130 pixels, like so. Spaces them out quite nicely. In fact, let me think about this for a second. We've got the post element. So I'm actually going to add a modifier to this, and I'm going to put post big. And we're going to add this margin bottom to here instead. So we're going to put post here, post big, and in a couple of minutes this will make sense why I've done this. Because I've got the elements underneath that are just kind of regular post elements that don't have the same height on those. They don't have the same margin bottom, as you can see. They're not spaced out. Or actually, maybe they do. They do actually. They do have the same height. So that doesn't matter. I can ignore everything that I've just said there. But the point I was going to get at is, if your first element has different spacing on it and things like that, you can actually double up on your classes, like I did, to be able to add a modifier to something that only applies to one thing, which overwrites the default sizes. But that's not going to be needed here. So I'm just going to take that back off, just leave it as post. So that spacing is good. Now, for this final one, for the post comment, I'm actually going to put a margin top on it, because it's the only way that I can achieve the thing that I'm doing. So I'm going to come to here, just double check the spacing on it, which is about 50 pixels. Margin top 50 pixels, and let's have a look at that. Yeah, that's not going to work because I need to display it block, because by default an A-link is just an inline element, so it won't take the margins. Now I've made it block, it'll work. So that's good, all that spacing is correct, and now I just need to space out this. So this is an instance where the spacing is bigger. So the spacing is bigger on this hero unit at the top here. It's 196 pixels, about 100 pixels tall, remember, because it's half. So the spacing here is 100 pixels, but the spacing here is much less than that. It's probably 25 pixels, yeah. And the rest of the spacing is around the same, but the spacing with the hero is different on the top one. So here is an instance where I'm going to do the thing that I said before. So we've got, in our HTML, we've got a post image at the top. I'm going to first of all style the post image up. Let me just double check I haven't done that already. No. So I'm going to target post image and do a margin bottom of, what did I say, 25 pixels. So that'll space out all the ones below quite nicely like that. But the spacing is too small on this one, which needs to be about 100 pixels-ish, maybe 90 pixels. So I'm going to make another one, a modifier, which I'm going to call big this time. And I'm going to put margin bottom 90 pixels. And I'm only going to put that class on the top one, the big one. So let's change that to post image big. And we've got more spacing. So now this site is nearly done. There's not much left to do in it. I've just got to put the actual content in a minute. So the layout of the top bit is all done. So now we're just going to generate these other 4 images as we did in the first video. So this is music festival at 2times.jpg. I'm going to make this 80%. And then for the other image, I want to make it 50%, because remember we're making the double size images for source set, so we're going to do that here. So I'm going to make this 50%, remove the 2 times, and let's go to here and just see if it's generated. There it is. 2 sizes, although they don't look any different because I've got a double density monitor. And let's generate this one too, do it using the exact same principle. So we'll call this one coffee, if I could spell coffee. Let's call this drink, because right now in the heat of the moment I can't spell coffee. So drink.2times JPEG, and then 50% again, and remove the 2 times. And we've got drink, which has been generated there. American Dream image and the 50% size again, and remove the 2 times from the name. We copy those over. Then the final one, yep, this is the final image. The final image is hat. 2 times .jpeg. Remember to make it 80% in my case. 50% again, remove the 2 times. The 2 times thing, by the way, is just my way of referencing the larger image. It's a standard that's actually come from iOS apps, but it's also a useful standard, I think, in web design too, because it means that you can keep the same file name but just put @2 times on the end. Obviously, if you make a bigger file, you put @3 times, @4 times, but I think it's a useful convention to follow. Just copy the hat over, and we've got all our images now. So let's copy them over into the files. The first one is the music festival one, and it's lifestyle. So let's change everything in our design now so it looks properly. Looks right, should I say, not properly. Let's have a look at these images. So we've got American Dream. And we've got American Dream 2 times. I'm just going to put the alt tag as an American Dream. In fact, no, I'll put more than just a music festival. In fact, it's the music festival image I'm looking for here, not American Dream. Yep, so let's change that to music festival. Music festival. And change this to music festival 2. Lifestyle, more than just a music festival. I'm going to save that and just check it in the web browser. There we go, looks good. So now the next one is also lifestyle. Yep. Copy lifestyle over. Life tastes better with coffee. Change the title. This is probably the most tedious part I find of building a website, to be perfectly honest. Changing images around and changing boring title tags and changing alt tags and things like that, I think is the least interesting part of a website. But it's character building. It's something that you have to do on most websites, unless you're lucky enough to have someone to do it for you. In this case, because I'm showing you how these things are done, I actually don't have somebody to do this for me, so I'm going to just have to continue doing it and continue moaning about it. So the next one is Photo Diary, and this is the American Dream one. That's the coffee one. This is the American Dream one. There we go. American Dream. And there's not really any quick way of doing this kind of thing either. It's just, you've got to be careful, and even though it's quite boring, you've got to be careful that you're getting everything correct. So it can actually be quite a difficult process to just focus on doing this kind of thing as well. So that's the American Dream, and then a day exploring the Alps, which is also a photo diary one. I've just noticed something as well that I've not done quite right, like the last thing that I did in the other video that I corrected. So I'm going to correct that in a second. What's this one called? What's this image called? Hat. This is the hat. Hat. There we go. So the thing that I've noticed is that I've linked up. So I've linked up this, but I haven't linked up the title, and I should do. So on every single one of these here, I haven't linked up the title. So I'm just going to quickly link up these titles, and it's probably going to change how I have to write my CSS, This is a good practice to get into when you're building a website statically like this, and it might not actually be a proper website, but it's a good habit to get into to make sure you've got all the links in the correct place, because when it comes to adding it to a CMS or making it into a proper website, you'll realize that you've forgotten something, the links, and then you'll have to go into your CSS and change things around because you've forgotten to style the links properly. So even when you're making just a simple little static website like this, always make sure you put the correct links in there, you put all the things in there that are going to be links, and as you can see what I've done, I've just used a hash symbol for now, because it can change how styles look and work and things like that. But that's still all working okay, which is great. So we've built the top of the website, it all looks fantastic, and the only final thing we've got to do now is just add in a form at the bottom of it. So just this sign up for our newsletter bit. So I'm just going to get the color of this. And you'll notice this is breaking out of the container that we've made. So I'm going to put this outside of the container right down here at the bottom somewhere. We'll call this contact form. I think that's an appropriate enough name for a thing like this. In fact, it's not. It's a newsletter form. So let's call it newsletter instead. I'm just going to put a P tag. In fact, let's put sign up to our newsletter in there, and let's make it a H3. Now, because this is only ever going to be used for such a simple thing, I'm not going to bother putting any classes on any of this stuff inside here. I'm just going to style it up with the things that I've got. But I'm still, let me just get that color again and I'll finish the thing that I was going to say. I'm still going to style up every heading inside there, because if you don't do that, you can often find yourself in the situation where you want to change a heading, you want to change some of your HTML, but you can't because you haven't styled everything up properly. So I'm going to apply my styles to all of the headings. It's something that I've always done in my CSS, just to kind of make things a little bit more flexible. So we'll do this, H2, H3, H4. It's good to think, by the way, whilst you're writing your CSS, about the future, about how your code is going to be used in the future. So get into this, get into a good habit of doing exactly the thing that I'm doing now. It makes your life a lot easier when you get further down the line. So that looks okay. Now, the size of it is the same as that. So that size I can get from higher up, which is 1.8. Cool. And then I'm just gonna put text align center on everything, because I think that's going to be enough for this. Then I'm actually just going to put some padding on this rather than margin bottom or margin top. Just going to figure out what padding it needs to be. It looks about 50 pixels. So it's actually about 75. Padding, 75 pixels. Oh, no, we just want it on the top and not the left and the right. So I'm going to put 75 pixels and 0, which applies it to top and bottom and left and right. There we go. And now I just need to put a form tag in there to make this final bit work. So I'm going to put a basic form in here. It's not going to work. It's not going to do anything. I'm just putting the actual form tag in there and nothing else really. I'm just going to put the input in there as well, which is just going to be input type text. I'm being naughty and not really doing it properly. But just for this example, it doesn't really need to do anything else. And then we need to put an input type submit in there too. Oops. So we've got the two values in there, which looks good. I'm going to put a class on this because we're going to change the styles of it in 2 seconds. and I'll show you how I'm going to do it too. And I'm doing it in just a dead simple way. Let's call that newsletter. Yeah, let's just leave it as newsletter. So now we need to put an underline under it. In fact, we need to put a placeholder on the actual text thing as well. So let's put a placeholder on of enter a valid email address. Cool, that's on there. So now I'm just going to put a border bottom on it, which is just black. And that's going to be the first thing we're going to do on our styles of newsletter. So we'll just put a border bottom on it of 1 pixel, make it solid and black. Oh, that's a bit too wide there. Let's have a look. Yeah, because the form element is actually a block level element, it's going to go the whole width. So we're going to change this to inline block, so it only goes to the width of the content that's inside it. There we go, that's a bit better. And now I'm going to style up the newsletter input to make it look a bit different. So there's no background on it, and there's no border on it and things like that. So change the background to none. Border to 0. And then we're going to increase the font size. I don't know what I was typing then. Increase the font size to just our standard font size. There we go, that's a bit better. Put some padding on it of maybe 0.3 em. That's looking a bit nicer. Change the font family to, where is it? The P tag one. Although I can't seem to find it now. Where are you? That's what I'm looking for. And it's just the font family we're changing it. In fact, no, let's leave it as the font and use the shorthand one properly, and we'll do it right. There we go. And we just need to make this a little bit wider, I think. So let's make it 250 pixels wide. That's better. And we need some spacing underneath this heading. So let's have a look at the spacing that we need. We need about 80 pixels spacing, so a margin bottom of 80 pixels. There we go, that's better. And we need to change the submit button. So the final piece to the puzzle is using this. So this element, when I can find it in here, is this icon. So we're going to save out this icon, just call it newsletter icon at 2 times. We're going to save this out as a ping so we can use it properly. And we're going to need the 1 times of this too. But I'm only going to, because the icon is going to be so small, I'm going to just use the 2 times icon. I'm not going to need this the single size icon. I'm just going to use the size of it in my CSS, and you'll see what I'm doing in a second. So the size of it is 32 by 17. And I'm going to do some standard text replacement, which is quite an old technique actually in terms of web design. Not many people use it these days, but this is actually a useful instance for me to use it. So I'm going to text replace this submit button. So to do that, I'm going to target the newsletter. Like this. I'm going to set the width and the height of it to the things that I've just looked at. And then I'm going to use a background. I'm going to bring the image in, the newsletter icon image, but the 2x image, and this will be obvious what I'm doing here in a second. I'm going to set it not to repeat there at the very end, so I'm using the shorthand statement for background. Now when I submit this, you'll see it's there, but it's looking a bit weird at the minute. So I'm going to do text indent minus 999 pixels. This is kind of an old thing to do, which gets rid of the text, get rid of the border, there we go. And now I just need to make the icon fit the space, so I'm going to do background size 100%, which will make it fill the space, and we've got the button. And it's a nice 2x button. But when I hover over it, you'll see it's not changing to the cursor icon. So the final thing I just want to do is just do cursor, pointer. Now when I hover over it, it looks correct. There we go. And then the final thing I need is just a bit of space in here underneath. So look, put some spacing in there. It looks like it might be about 100 pixels, about 120. So on the newsletter form, just put a margin bottom of 120 pixels. And there we go. So the whole layout is done there, and it's looking nice. The only final thing we've got to do is we're just going to do a really, really basic responsive version of this. So when you resize this at the minute, it's not doing anything. So I'm just going to change this. So instead of it being a width on the container, so if we go back to the container, it's a width. I'm going to change this to max width, which means that now when I go like this, it resizes. But as you can see there, it's kind of uncomfortably close to the edge of the page. So I'm actually just going to put some padding on this. Just on the left and right. So I'm going to put 0 padding for the top and the bottom. And for the left and right, I'm going to put 5%. So now it kind of keeps the sizes like that. This doesn't look too bad actually, because we're only making a simple responsive website here. I'm not going to worry too much about this navigation, and I think as it goes down there, I think that looks fine. The width looks okay. I'm not too concerned about that. All the content looks fine. The only thing I want to change is this. I just want to change this so these go at a certain width, they go under each other. And at the minute they're not. They're kind of sticking like that. So it probably, let's have a look. So I think it's 600 pixels. No, let's make it a bit smaller because I think it still looks okay. At 530 pixels, we're going to make these go under each other just so it looks a bit better. And that's the only change we're going to make. So I'm going to make a change down here. I'm going to add another class. We've got col6 on all these, so I'm going to add col6 small, and we're going to make the width of this 100%, but only when the width is lower than 530 pixels. So I've made a rudimentary grid in this website. It's a very, very simple grid, and it doesn't do much, and I've written most of the classes myself. In fact, I've written all the classes myself, and I'm only making one small breakpoint change here. So now I'm going to add this class to all the elements that I want it to work on. This is usually how a grid works on a website as well. When you use Bootstrap, for example, the classes that I've added here are very, very similar to Bootstrap, but it's all written for you already, so you don't tend to understand what's happening when you look at it. But this is really what's happening with Bootstrap's grid, albeit a little bit more fancy and things like that. So let's have a look when we drop it down, and it goes 100% width, and that is pretty much it. I think the one final thing I want to change is the margin bottom on the post items when it's small. So I'm going to target the 530 again, and I'm just going to apply the margin bottom on the post after 530. So I'm just going to change this here, and I'm going to do min width 530 pixels, and I'm going to put the post thing inside. And then above it, the default post, I still want to put a margin bottom on it, but I want to make it a lot smaller. I'm going to make it 50 pixels. Let's have a look at that. Let's make it small. Yeah, that margin bottom's much better there. And that's it. That is it. It looks exactly how we expected it to look. We've made the entire design look nice. It pretty much works responsively. There's not much more work we do to it. We've used image and source set in there. We've made it a little bit responsive. We've copied a design, and it looks pretty much pixel perfect. It took me longer than I expected to achieve the design, but I think that's the nature of this kind of thing. It took me about an hour and 15, and when you first start doing this kind of thing, it's probably going to take you way longer than that. You've seen the speed that I was working at this, and I kind of knew exactly what I was doing and where I was putting things. So do not be put off if this kind of thing takes you way longer than what it took me to do this. So thank you for watching this video. This is the first of a lot of build-alongs or watch-alongs that I'm going to do, so you can see how I build websites and how you might want to build websites in the future. This video was just a really simple example. We've started with the very basics. We haven't used any pre-processors, and the power of this video was to just show you how you can simply build a modern website by just using HTML and CSS.